Welcome to Revitalize and Replant. My name is Thom Rainer. I am joined by Kevin Ezell, the president of the North American Mission Board. We have been having fun, and I really mean it, doing a three-part series. And the three-part series is when the church or when a church is looking for a pastor. In the first two parts, part one of this, we talked about what do you do when the interim wants to become the pastor? Had some pretty, some humorous and some just downright serious discussion about what do you do about the interim pastor who's decided that he wants to be the pastor. Then we went into part two, how to be considered to be the pastor of another church. Now we're going into part three, and this is kind of the next stage. The church has contacted you, and they seem very interested in you, and now you want to do your homework, and you want to find out what you need to be doing to find out about the church. By the way, we're responsive. We're sponsored by Revitalize and Replant and the North American Mission Board and churchreplanters.com. Check out the resources on church planting, church replanting, about evangelism, about disaster relief. Go to churchreplanters.com for that topic, and go to NAM, North American Mission Board, NAMB.net to find out more about them. I bet Kevin Ezell has had more conversations in a month or two about this topic, people wanting to find out about a church.
Right. Well, you've got to do your due diligence and find the data, the accurate data. You know, as you know, don't ask how many members they have. That matters not. You want to get some, and what I always try to get is a 5 to 10 year window of data, not just the last year's data, to kind of see. You can graph it out and see the ebb and flow, and obviously, okay, there's a big drop there. What happened? There's an issue. You know, somebody didn't like getting rid of the organ, or what happened. And so I get the data, but when I have data, it's more than just numbers. You know, I try to work that data to see if there's some potential issues and history there.
Getting the data used to be relatively easy in the Southern Baptist Convention because churches reported regular to the what we now call the annual church profile. About 75% of them do now on a regular basis.
Or less. Mm-hmm.
But you still can get data directly from the church, whether you're in a denomination or not. And Kevin's point about evaluating the data, I remember a conversation I had with a pastor who was looking at a church, and they said the average attendance, my numbers are going to be off, I'm going to try to remember them the best I can, was 1,500, and they were in 2 services, and their sanctuary held 300.
Yeah.
So it's not likely. It's just
that online community, you know, they're maybe counting that. Maybe it's,
I don't even think they had streaming at this time. So
no.
You got to check. You got to check the data on the church, and then you got to check, okay, what is behind this data? Now, let me ask you about this question. Is this advisable or not? You're getting on down the road, should you contact another pastor in that community?
Yeah. You're more trusting than I am, you know, and so you might. I wouldn't. You know, I just found that guys, they can't help but tell somebody that somebody asked their opinion, and then they can come back to burn you. You know what I always did? I especially if it got serious, I would ask people in the community that I didn't know. I'd always you go through a convenience store or Walmart, or you know, ask the cashier, hey, have you ever heard of? You know, I'm new in town. Have you ever heard of this church, or what church would you recommend me go to? You have one you'd recommend me, and see if they even listed it or not, if they heard about it or not. And so I like the random idea from the community, although that could be dangerous. But other pastors, I never did that. But
well, okay, I think Amy for that point is contact a pastor in the community ? Instead of period on that.
I mean, it depends on the trust level. Again, I'm just hesitant because I just got burned a couple of times, you know.
Well, I did have a trust level, but I never will again as a result of this conversation. Well, possibility. And as Kevin said, if not the pastor, maybe you can contact someone in the community that doesn't even know who you are.
Exactly.
And that you're talking to them. you feel comfortable talking to a denominational leader. For me, with the church in Southern Baptist life, that could be an associational leader, state leader, or even a national entity head like yourself.
Sure.
In other denominations, they would have different titles, but how do you feel about that? Is that
absolutely. That'd be a great, hopefully objective resource. And again, if you're a little concerned, I've often had friends check out churches for me. Say, hey, we want to call someone, and they just say, hey, what would you know about this church? I got a friend of mine's considering it, and doing it that way.
I like that. So you are still anonymous, but you're getting the information.
Exactly. Yeah. And so,
how many? I don't want you to give me a count on this, Kevin, but what is the frequency that you get someone saying, "What do you know about such and such church?"
Oh my word! As you know, I get several a week, and several a week about something about a specific church, and then in general, hey, do you know of any churches that are looking for a pastor? Pastors are about to leave, and so I mean, really easily 4 or 5 of those a week.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're hearing from these pastors, and some of them are looking for a church, but some of them have already been contacted from that church, which is what our topic is today. And they really want to know what's going on. We also recommend that you get demographics and psychographics of the community. Our reported church answers is called Know Your Community. It has some neat infographics. Here's what we have found, Kevin. Most church members and church leaders do not know their community. They do not know who's really there. They have presumptions about who is there, but they don't have a demographic view, much less a psychographic, which is what their desires and aspirations are. It's easy to get a demographic or psychographic report, so why not? Why not?
Right. No, absolutely. You're never going to get too much information on a place that you're thinking about moving your family to and investing your life and potentially the rest of your life to.
Yes.
So I would leave no stone unturned as far as trying to find out information, and especially the demographic. You can tell a lot about the school systems, where they're going to build future elementary schools, or even if they are, they're shutting them down, or if they're opening them up. The businesses will tell you a lot about that, and the best. It's just some best practices, I think.
Well, all of my pastoral moves were while my kids were still at home, and so every one of those moves included a look at the prospective schools for my 3 sons.
Yeah,
I didn't want to make these moves in a vacuum, and it was affecting a wife, and it was affecting 3 sons, in addition to my life, and I wanted to find out about it.
Well, plus, you find out, look, they're about to build an elementary school not 1 mile from the church and they're going to build. That just means more families are coming. They've done the work already. They know that families are coming.
True.
And so that's where we, as we try to find potential church plant locations, we follow all those demographics of where the businesses and the schools are projecting population growth. And that's where we want to get ahead of the game, hopefully, and find some locations.
We're talking to Dr. Kevin Ezell, the president of the North American Mission Board. We're in a 3-part series, and the 3-part series is when a church is looking for a pastor. Go back to our first part of the series is what to do when the interim pastor wants to become the pastor. Also, check our second part of the series, how to be considered to be pastor of another church. And now we're in the third of this 3-part series, is how to evaluate a church that has contacted you about being its pastor. What should they do about the staff that is there, part-time and full-time? I made the statement, find out as much about the staff at the church as possible, but give me some good practical advice there.
No, absolutely. I think, it's amazing how foolish people are online. On their social media, you can go on and find a lot about who they are, and then if you follow who they like, certain thing they liked or endorsed, and you can get a pretty good personality profile of, and even the wisdom, of what they engage on online. We just found here, and one of the very first easy gets is online. I'm amazed at how people have no discernment, no filter of what they put on there that's going to follow you, literally the rest of your life. And so, but everything you possibly can.
I will also say, as a man with experience in this, don't think you can delete a tweet quickly enough. People are there with screenshots before you say, "Oh no, I tweeted that," even if it's an accident.
Yeah,
and you can delete it real quickly, but people already have the screenshots. I speak from experience. Every now and then it will come back and people will remind me of something.
Let me give you an example of being specific of what I mean. I've talked to a church the other day and I said, well, this one particular guy, what's your major concern? It seemed like you have a concern. To me, he's incredibly qualified. And they're like, well, there was one thing on his social media. And I said, well, what was it? And it was something that would have been borderline politically incorrect, but it wasn't something he posted. It was something that someone had posted on his Facebook page.
Mm.
And I'm like, well,
that's an overreaction.
Yeah, I was like, look, maybe he monitors it daily, but that's a little unfair to go to that degree. But you at least need to. I just think when you're looking at staff and people, I looked up every person on the pulpit committee, and tried to.
Smart.
Yeah, when I went in, when I was interviewing NAM, I remember there was one particular. I went in and tried to just Google and find out as much as because then if you're going to use analogies, if 3 or 4 of those guys like baseball, you use baseball analogies, or if you have a.
That's really funny.
I found one. You will not believe what's online though. There was a Christmas party Sunday school fellowship where they had to say, what's one thing about you that no one else knows? And this one particular attorney on the NAM search committee he put on there that he almost drowned in quicksand on a hunting trip once. And I couldn't believe I even found that as a Christmas party thing, just Googling his name. Well, when we were interviewing, I brought that up. I said, hey, one of these days you've got to, he kept saying, we really checked you out. We really checked you out. And I said, one of these days you got to tell me about how you got stuck in quicksand. And he was shocked. He's like, how did you know that? I said, you're not the only one who checks people out. And, you can find out, it's a tremendous amount of what you can find out on, and knowing the committee you're dealing with, their backgrounds, and it will, because they typically are some of the best in the church or the most respected in the church, and that gives you a good sense of where the church is.
So this is also a good reminder, a little bit off topic, but it is a good reminder for pastors and other staff that their social media is going to be checked. So I guess the word is don't do stupid. And even if it's there for a brief season, don't do stupid.
Right. No.
I've done stupid. All of my stupids have been accidental, but they've been really stupid accidentals.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're consistent.
I am consistently stupid on those things. Hey, I'm looking at Amy. Can I say these things? Is this far enough ahead? Okay, just want to make sure. Just check it. Yeah. Inside joke. Probably everybody knows everybody. Okay. Also, the bylaws. You mentioned the word bylaws, and a lot of people get the boring look and the yawn. But I have seen bylaws get weaponized once you come to a church, and you really need to check them out to know what's going on there.
Yeah, you do. You got to know what's in there, and at the same time, know that not every church goes by those, and what's on paper is not how they often function. And it's crazy sometimes the things that are unwritten bylaws. I remember I forgot what committee I had in my one church at Marion. That was they called it the Great Commission Committee or something like that. But it was the chairman of the finance committee, the chairman of the deacons, the chairman of the WMU, and all. And they're the church council. That's what they call it. And they're the ones that actually were the power brokers in the church, that church council. And but it wasn't in the bylaws. That just wasn't. We all get together, and that's kind of where we make the decisions. Well, that wasn't even in there. So.
The reason that I would say check it out, even if they're not functioning or not using them in the way, is one pastor went to a church and 4 years later, there was a called business meeting, and the bylaws allowed it to be called, and it allowed for a majority vote at the time to fire the pastor.
Yeah.
And that when he asked about it early on, they said, "Oh, we don't even pay attention to that." Well, someone did.
They do when they want to.
But,
no, you're exactly right. You need to read the bylaws. I'm just saying there just may be some additional addendums to the bylaws that you're not aware of that are not printed.
Yeah,
it's both and. Yeah.
It's the official language and the informal language, and sometimes informal is more powerful than the formal. Now, I'm going to guess on this one that you would say, we may need to put a question mark at the end of this. Should you contact the exiting pastor or former pastors? I put be careful on here because I don't know if that's something or not.
It depends. I would say it depends. My last two churches, I followed guys who had fallen in affairs. And so I contacted them once I got there. I went and met with them and said, "Hey, God used you to do many great things. I want to build upon what you've laid out and any suggestions you might have." And I learned from them after I went there. I didn't do it before, but that was unique. If you think you can, that's just a calculated risk. And I probably would ask the committee's permission before I did that.
That's a good point. If it's a committee. Now, we've got some who listen to this podcast who have a different type of pastoral appointment system. So whoever is bringing you on, that would be a good way to check. So, Kevin, we're wrapping up this series. The 3-part series is when a church is looking for a pastor. We've talked about the interim pastor wanting to be the pastor. We've talked about how to be considered for a church. We've talked about once the church contacts you, what to do. Anything standing out in this series that you may want to repeat? Because keep in mind that by the time they're listening to this 3rd part, they may have forgotten some of the other parts to this point. Yeah. Any of the more important things to remember about any of these issues when a church is looking for a pastor?
Well, over and over again, your spouse needs to be a part of every step of this and to make sure you're on the same page. And I would just really make certain before you leave what you know to go to what you don't know, just you make certain that you feel released, and if you don't have a sense of a vision or anticipation or expectation of what can happen where you are, then maybe God is transitioning you, but just be real slow to do that and not run from things. But there are times it's opportunities before you and, obviously feel led to go. And for me, sometimes I felt a sense of release or that God was finished with me but I didn't necessarily have anywhere to go, and it was confusing for me at times. Like, look, I really feel like a sense of completion, but I don't have a desire to leave and don't have a desire to go. That actually what happened before I came to NAM and to Highview. I sensed like, man, God's done with me, right? But I kept thinking maybe am I going to die? I didn't want to go to the denominational position. I didn't want to go to another church. And I was real confused. Like, I want to go to the denominational position. Yeah, I'm being serious. I told Jeff Goodyear, guy on staff, like, man, I'm a little fearful because I don't want to, there's no other option, of what I want to do, but I do have a sense of completion here, and I don't know what that is. But sometimes I think God paddle shocks you, and you go into a second season in the same place, so.
I'll bring up for my highlight of this 3-part series, not my highlight, but just something that stuck with me, is the part about the data and getting data. I had completed my PhD and probably had a bit of a hot shot mentality that I was going to get a certain church. And I really thought I was going to get a certain church, and attendance was 800 or 900, which is big for a guy coming out of seminary at the time. And it was also in the panhandle of Florida, and I just thought everything was going to be great. Well, here's the issue. They turned me down. I did not get it. Okay. Heartbroken. And it was time to find a church. I'd been pastoring a church in the Louisville area, but it's time to move on to what was going to be my post-seminary church. And there was this one contact from Zaya Baptist Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was the lowest attendance of all the churches that had contacted me, the data. They showed me the average attendance for the previous year. Don't ask me why it stuck with me, but it was 118. And Logic would have said, hey, man, you've got this degree, which meant something back then. Doesn't mean a whole lot right now. And you've done all this work. And, hey, you even have a book out. So you're a big snot. Go to a big church. Well, I looked at the demographics around the church, and I saw so much potential. 118 in attendance, but you go within 10 minutes drive and you're looking at 300 to 400,000 people.
Yeah,
it blew me away. And so I went to that church, and what happened was God said, yeah, he's going to grow this church. And it tripled pretty quickly. And it was an amazing thing. But my ego would have driven me to another church. But this was what was left over, and it became the best of them. So don't just look at the data of the church of how big it is. Look at the data of what God's opportunity is there as well. Right. So it was a great story. I've loved this series, Kevin.
Hey, it's been so much fun. Hey, I don't know if I ever told you, right after Dr. Rogers left Bellevue.
Yes.
It was about 3 months later. I called Bellevue and had them ask them if they would I wanted to withdraw my name from consideration. It wasn't in consideration. But I told my chairman Deacons, I just want you to know, in case you hear any rumors, I withdrew my name from the Bellevue. I'm staying.
That is hilarious. Again, let me remind you to listen to all three parts of this series when a church is looking for a pastor. We've gone through a lot of areas, and I think you can get a lot of good background on that. We're approaching the December season and Christmas season, and so just to wish all of you a blessed Christ-filled Christmas as you head toward that time of the year. I know it's been a challenging 2 years, but I really want to thank all of you who listen and watch Revitalize and Replant, because we now have the YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe at the YouTube channel. Give us a rating and review at iTunes or Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. But we're looking forward to being with you in 2022. We've got a lot of good stuff coming on. The hat, Mark Clifton, the International Harvester hat, will be with us on other episodes too. So get ready to join us, and we'll continue to help churches get healthier together.